An 8-year-old girl's simple question brought a crowded town hall to a standstill, leaving Donald Trump to share a deeply personal story about faith, loss, and redemption. What followed moved everyone in the room to tears. The church fellowship hall in Shreveport, Louisiana, was alive with the soft hum of folding chairs scraping against the polished floor and murmured conversations. Typically used for Sunday potlucks and Bible study, the hall felt different that evening. At the front stood Donald Trump, his familiar orange-tinted face and signature gestures filling the modest space. But tonight there was a subtle shift in his demeanor. He seemed unusually subdued, perhaps sensing the weight of the moment. Among the crowd, mostly made up of families, retirees, and curious locals, one figure stood out. Not for her size, but for her quiet intensity. 8-year-old Lily, dressed in her best Sunday dress, clutched an old leather-bound Bible, her late grandmother's cherished gift. Its pages were worn, and the gold lettering was faded. Before they arrived, her mother had whispered, "You can ask him, but only if you truly mean it." Lily had nodded, her heart racing as she rehearsed her question in secret for weeks. As Trump spoke, his usual topics, policies, achievements, and the future of America, drew tepid applause. The crowd was engaged, but the energy felt different from his typical rallies. Lily, however, sat quietly, gripping her Bible, her small hands trembling as she waited for the chance to ask her question. Finally, the floor opened for questions. A line quickly formed, with adults eager to ask about local issues, national policies, and even a few compliments about his signature red tie. Lily hesitated at first, shrinking back in her seat, but when her mother nudged her gently, she knew it was her moment. Her legs felt unsteady as she rose to her feet, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure the whole room could hear it. When her turn came, Trump looked down at her, his expression softening. "And what's your question, young lady?" he asked, his voice surprisingly gentle. Lily's hands tightened around the Bible as she swallowed hard. Then, with a voice that trembled but remained steady, she asked the question that had been weighing on her heart. "Mr. Trump, what does God mean to you?" The room fell into an immediate, profound silence. Eyes darted between Lily and Trump, the weight of her question pressing down like a tangible force. For a man known for his quick, confident responses, this pause felt jarring. Trump stared at Lily for a long moment, his usual bravado replaced by something softer, almost vulnerable. He glanced at the Bible she held, and something seemed to shift in him. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower and steadier than usual. "That's a big question, and it's not one I've always had the answer to." Trump paused, clearly gathering his thoughts. He looked back at Lily. "When I was about your age," he continued, "I had a lot of questions about God, too. My parents would take me to church every Sunday. I remember sitting in those pews, staring at the stained glass windows, wondering if God was even listening to me." The crowd listened intently, sensing that something deeper was unfolding. "My father used to tell me," Trump said, his voice becoming softer, "that faith is like a ladder. You climb it one step at a time. Sometimes you're afraid you'll fall, but you keep climbing because there's something up there worth reaching for." At the time, Trump didn't understand. "I thought it was just something he said to keep me quiet," he said, his tone momentarily lightening with a soft chuckle from the crowd. But as he got older, life threw many challenges his way, losses, failures, and times when he didn't feel God's presence. Sometimes he was angry at God. The room was utterly still, captivated by this rare moment of vulnerability. "I'll tell you this," Trump said, his voice firming slightly. "Even in my worst moments, when I thought I was alone, I realized that faith wasn't about always having the answers. It's about believing that even when you don't see the whole picture, there's a purpose. There's something greater at work." He turned back to Lily, whose wide eyes glistened. "And God, to me, is that purpose," he said slowly. "He's the reminder that even when we fall, even when we fail, we're not done. He's the one who keeps telling us to climb the ladder, even when it feels like it's going to break. Yes, it's the solution. No." The room was silent. Lily, her grip on the Bible loosening, stood a little taller, her heart touched by the words she hadn't even known she needed to hear. Trump paused, then smiled faintly. "Thank you for asking that question, Lily. You're wiser than most adults I know." Lily's eyes filled with tears, but this time they were not from sadness. They were from something deeper, something far more profound. Her mother leaned over and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart." But Lily shook her head. This wasn't about sadness. It was about understanding, about connection. Trump, sensing the moment's power, added, "Sometimes the simplest questions are the hardest to answer, and sometimes those questions remind us of what really matters." Lily's tear-filled eyes never left him. "My grandma used to say that too," she said softly. She said, God is always listening, even when you don't hear him. Trump's expression softened and he nodded. Your grandma sounds like a very wise woman, he said, his voice warm. She's right. Faith is like a seed. It doesn't always sprout the way you expect, but that doesn't mean it's not there, growing in ways you can't see. The room, once filled with political chatter, now hummed with a deeper energy. People who had come expecting a typical rally found themselves part of something much more personal, a shared reflection on faith, doubt, and hope. As the evening continued, more people spoke up, sharing their struggles, their anger at God, their doubts. Trump listened, offering words of encouragement. Faith, he said, isn't about being perfect. It's about trying, even when you don't have all the answers. It's about understanding that sometimes we all need to climb that ladder together. By the end of the evening, the town hall had transformed. It wasn't just about politics, it was about connection. A simple question from a young girl had unlocked something in everyone present. Faith wasn't about certainty, it was about believing, even in the midst of doubt. As the room slowly emptied, the air was thick with reflection. Strangers shared stories, exchanged hugs, and offered comfort in ways they hadn't before. Lily, holding her grandmother's Bible close, looked up at her mother. Grandma would have been proud, she said, her voice soft but determined. Her mother smiled through teary eyes. She would have been more than proud, sweetheart. She would have been amazed. And as the last of the crowd filtered out, the message of the evening was clear. Sometimes the bravest questions lead to the most unexpected answers, and in those answers we find the pieces of ourselves we didn't know we were missing.